Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first event of the 2008-2009 NYU Reynolds Social Entrepreneurship in the 21st Century Speaker Series. I'm not quite sure what to say to please such a large group of ascetics, since you're also willing to forego lunch to spend an hour and a half hearing about great food. But I'm going to do my best. My name is Joshua Levin, and perhaps I'm here because, like our speaker today, I got my start in grocery stores. As a teenager, I was a janitor in a New Jersey Stop and Shop, and frankly, it was a terrible, terrible experience. So I really appreciate what Whole Foods has done to apparently make the experience of working in supermarkets that much better. Nonetheless, I went on to try and do different things. I studied international development at Harvard University, and since then I've had a variety of experiences, ranging from tracking tigers in Cambodia for Conservation International to founding an education services and technology company called Red Key Education, which now operates in Boston, Providence, New Haven, and Paris, France. Most recently, I worked for Root Capital, which is a social venture fund based in Boston, and I expanded their lending portfolio to South Africa, where I finance sustainable agriculture export enterprises in chili, wine, spices, and essential oils. I'm currently at NYU focusing on finance for sustainable agriculture, and I'm also fortunate enough to be a Catherine B. Reynolds Fellow in Social Entrepreneurship. The Reynolds Program is designed to cultivate a new generation of leaders and thinkers in social entrepreneurship by funding graduate fellowships and undergraduate scholarships throughout 11 schools at NYU, as well as bringing additional resources to campus. The program is really one of a kind in its central tenet that social entrepreneurship is a meta profession. It's a way of thinking and acting that transcends the different disciplines. The speaker series is an important part of this in that we bring in innovative leaders from a variety of fields, ranging from art to science and technology to medicine to grocery stores. I'm therefore here today to welcome the founder and the CEO of Whole Foods Markets, Mr. John Mackey. John Mackey got his start in 1978, launching what was then Safeway in the Victorian home with his then girlfriend after leaving the University of Texas. And 2 years later, the name was changed to Whole Foods Markets, and it was set up in the dingy, dusty, abandoned shell of a former nightclub. I doubt that at that time, John Mackey could have anticipated the incredible success that his venture would later have, since it's not that easy to start the first vegetarian supermarket in the great BBQ state of Texas. However, 30 years later, John Mackey is still at the helm, but now the CEO of the largest natural and organic foods chain in the world, a $7 billion company employing 53,000 people. And as if that wasn't enough, John Mackey works for a salary of $1 per year. He donates all of his stock options to charities. The firm donates tens of millions of dollars to additional charities. And all of the energy usage of the stores is offset through the purchase of wind power credits. I would even go so far as to say that John Mackey nearly single-handedly has changed American consciousness about shopping, how to run a business, and food. So a couple hours from now, when you finally sit down to perhaps take your lunch, delirious with hunger, with weary eyes, I hope that you look down at your plate of food and perhaps you will see something different. Perhaps you will see the very face of John Mackey saying, "Take pause. Eating is a transcendental experience. With every bite, you interact with the world and with yourself. Food starts in the ecosystem, in the very living soil. It then goes to the farmer, to the international economy, to our family dinner tables, and finally fuels our own nutrition, our thoughts, our actions, and indeed our very consciousness. Food connects the great systems of ecology, economy, and body. And likewise, when there's a problem in one area, it's mirrored through the rest. It's no coincidence that over the last 50 years, as Americans have experienced the taste quality of their food declining, obesity has arisen as the #1 driver of healthcare costs in this country. Food production has arisen as the #1 global source of greenhouse gas emissions and the #1 cause of deforestation and biodiversity loss. John Mackey's brilliance, I feel, was to build a company that lashed itself onto every segment of this supply chain, creating value for all of the stakeholders simultaneously, and rallying far more than 53,000 people around a singular vision of changing the way we eat. The result has been unprecedented efficiency, increases of productivity, and the simultaneous linkages have created unparalleled competitive advantage, which have resulted in Whole Foods markets being far and away the most profitable grocery store chain in history. This grand vision is perfectly embodied in the company's motto, Whole Foods, Whole People, Whole Planet. It is therefore my tremendous pleasure and honor to welcome to the stage today the founder and CEO of Whole Foods Markets, Mr. John Mackey.
Josh, I'm sorry we lost you to the grocery business. It's too bad you started out at Stop and Shop, and if you'd started at Whole Foods, you'd probably still be there today. Hey, that introduction was quite a bit of exaggeration. I can tell you that right now. And but you could go far in PR. Anyway, I'm very appreciative, and I'm glad my PR team's actually not here to be writing some of that stuff down. What I want to talk about today is conscious capitalism, and I think it's got a lot of relevance to the social entrepreneur programs that you have here at NYU. And it raises an interesting question about whether we need a new business paradigm. I mean, in some ways, the timing to talk about this is very good since we're in a financial crisis, probably what the media says, the worst since the Great Depression. And I believe that historians will someday look back on the 20th century and they will see that there was a great struggle between capitalism and socialism. And capitalism soundly won that battle. However, unfortunately, it did not capture the minds of the intellectuals nor the hearts of the people. And that's resulting in many, many ongoing problems. I think it's fair to say that corporations today are the most influential institutions in the world today. And yet, they're commonly perceived as greedy, selfish, exploitative, and not worthy of being trusted. I think the anti-globalization movement can largely be seen as an anti-corporation movement. People are very scared that corporations have some type of devious plot to take over and rule the world. And I find it fascinating as I watch this financial crisis. Of course, I'm not very happy that Whole Foods stock prices going down the toilet along with everybody else's stock prices, but I find it fascinating that it's being totally blamed on greedy financial businesses. It's about greed as opposed to perhaps politicians taking a little responsibility themselves for some pretty bad regulations. Instead, businessmen are blamed and deregulation and markets are put forth as the villains in the piece. I don't personally agree with that. I think that's inaccurate. I think history will show that to be inaccurate, but nevertheless, that is the current theories that are being trotted out there. Anyway you figure it, right now corporations and capitalism have got serious branding problems. They are not well loved. Which raises the question, what will be the model for the 21st century? And I'm going to put forth today that I think it should be and could be a model of conscious capitalism. When we create enough conscious businesses, and when I talk today about Whole Foods Market, I'll be talking about a conscious business, someday we'll reach a tipping point and capitalism will make a transition to what I call conscious capitalism. We've got serious limitations on the current business models. The theories of business are badly outdated. They're still using metaphors that trace themselves back to the 18th and 19th century with machine metaphors, industrial metaphors, war metaphors, and Darwinian metaphors. And those mislead us into the true nature of what business is really about. Current business thinking lacks any awareness of deeper business purposes, the systems interdependencies that exist, ecological consciousness, and responsibility to stakeholders besides the investors. So let's go back to basics about business. And let's ask the most fundamental question. What is the purpose of a business? Why does it exist? And it's a curious question, because the answer that you ask somebody on the street, or the first thing that pops in your mind probably is the purpose of business is to maximize profits. That's why it exists, maximize long-term shareholder value. Which is a curious answer, because that's not the answer you would give if you ask what the purpose of a doctor is. Doctors are very well off in our society, but that's not their purpose, to make as much money as possible. Their purpose would be to heal the sick. And what is the purpose of a teacher? To educate people. The purpose of an architect, to design buildings. The tricky one in this one is, what's the purpose of a lawyer? And I would submit that, all lawyer jokes aside, the purpose of the law should be to promote justice and to promote fairness in our society. All of the professions have a reference back to a deeper purpose, a purpose that connects back into society. Everyone but business. That's where business got off track. That's where economists got off track. They misunderstood why business exists. And it also raises the question, who defines the purpose of the business? And just a little bit of thought, you'll realize that it has to be the entrepreneurs who create the business. They're the only ones, not economists in the ivory tower. How can they define what the purpose of Whole Foods Market is? The creators of Whole Foods Market have the right to define the original purpose of the business. I have known a lot of entrepreneurs in my life, and with very few exceptions, have any of them ever told me, yeah, I just started the business to get as rich as possible. And it was my privilege to meet Bill Gates recently. And believe it or not, the richest man in the world did not start Microsoft to become the richest man in the world. He started it because he was passionate about software. And he saw software and computers could have a transformative effect. The wealth came as a byproduct of that passion and that deeper purpose. In the conscious business, entrepreneurs are what I call entrepreneurs of meaning. They have to interpret what the purpose of the business is to all of the stakeholders who are participating in the business. Now, what's very interesting when you think about what the purpose of foods is, I didn't go up on a mountaintop and have a God speak to me and tell me what the purpose of Whole Foods was. And that was 30 years ago that we first began the company. The purpose is evolving. The entrepreneurs may create the original purpose, but then that purpose co-evolves. If it's a dynamic organization, it goes to deeper purpose, deeper levels of purpose, and deeper layers of complexity. It's my belief that businesses that flourish over the long term find ways to continue to co-evolve their purpose to higher levels of complexity and meaning. I also believe that great companies have great purposes. And I stole this, let's be very clear, Plato came up with these, and he's slightly older than me. And the good, the true, the beautiful, and I added the heroic. I think the greatest businesses on the planet today are animated at their core by one of these deep purposes. If we think about service to others, expressing love and care, the good, and we can think of some businesses that represent that. A good example for me would be Southwest Airlines. It's one I think is a very service-oriented business. Or the Container Store is another one that is particularly service-oriented. If we think about the pursuit of the true, the discovery and the pursuit of the truth, just think how exciting it is to discover something that no one has ever known before, to create a product that takes human knowledge to a place it's never been. And some companies that are animated by this deep purpose, I think Google is, I think Wikipedia is, I think Genentech is another great company that is pushing truth and the boundaries of truth further. What about the beautiful, the quest and pursuit of perfection? What is a great company that pursues that? My favorite example is Apple Computer, because certainly everything Steve Jobs has ever done has been beautiful, and it's been in some ways perfect. And if not perfect, certainly pushing further the possibilities of what perfect could represent. Another example, which is a little different, I think Warren Buffett in Berkshire Hathaway is a great company, and I think it's the pursuit of perfection in his own realm of investing and seeking intrinsic value in the quest for excellence. Oops. And finally, the heroic, to change and improve the world, to help humanity to go to a further place. In some ways, all of the first three, the good, the true, and the beautiful, overlap with this one. But I think of a company like Microsoft as one that has changed and improved the world and had a heroic purpose animating it. So, anecdotally, which of these great purposes is at the core of Whole Foods Market? And it also shows you how purpose evolves in a company, because for years, I honestly believed that the deeper purpose of Whole Foods was service to others. We are a retail business, after all. We have to serve our customers. And expressing care and love in the world. But when I do this talk to the team members of Whole Foods, and I don't give them any hints, and I ask them to raise their hands for each one of these four, you get to vote. Which one would you vote for? The good, the true, the beautiful, the heroic. The good gets about a 20% vote, and the true and the beautiful get a few sprinkling of hands. The overwhelming choice of the Whole Foods team members is that Whole Foods' deeper purpose is the heroic, to change and improve the world. That's a great example of stakeholders evolving the purpose of an organization. You know, I've gotten to be old enough now where I can speak with some authority about the secret to happiness in life. When you're younger, nobody takes you very seriously, even if you say the same things. But one thing I discovered is that happiness is best not aimed directly for. If you make it your goal in life to be happy, you probably won't achieve it. Instead, you're probably going to be a narcissist, involved with your own petty concerns, your own pleasures, your mind filled with relatively trivial things. And you might be entertained, you might find a lot of pleasure in life, but I predict you will not find happiness. Instead, happiness is a byproduct of having a deeper purpose, of love and service and care for others, excellence, personal growth, self-actualization, and of course the virtues of friendship, generosity, forgiveness, love, and compassion. If we pursue those other goals, we will someday discover that we're happy, and that happiness snuck in the back door when we weren't looking. I think it's very similar with profits in a business, that the business that focuses strictly on profits may achieve them temporarily, but over the long term, if they don't engage all of their stakeholders in true partnership, it's very likely profits will begin to disappear. Instead, profits are also a byproduct of higher business purpose, great products and services, customer satisfaction, team member happiness, and social and environmental responsibility. I believe long-term profits are maximized. I give my tip to shareholder value by saying that we can achieve it, but we'll get it indirectly by not making them the primary goal. And that's because business is not a machine. The old metaphor in the 18th century where we had Adam Smith and we had these inputs in land, labor, capital, mix them together in the right mix, and out spits profits down the assembly line. That metaphor, while perhaps relevant for the main part of the Industrial Revolution, is less and less relevant today. Instead, in the 21st century, leadership's job is to fulfill the deeper purpose of the organization and to optimize the health and the value of the entire business system. If we optimize the entire business system, that will equal the highest long-term profits and greatest shareholder value. And I sometimes get asked, what about the price system? Of course, the price system is absolutely essential, but I see it as a tool that leadership uses in order to fulfill its purpose and optimize the system. It's not an absolute dictator to obey. This is basically a model of Whole Foods Market's business model, what I call holistic interdependence. It starts at the very center with our business mission and our core values. And radiating out from that center like spokes on a wheel are the various interdependent stakeholders. The team members, the customers, the suppliers, the investors, the community, and the larger environment. If you manage that as a system, seeking to optimize value simultaneously for each of the stakeholders, you end up in a virtuous circle or a virtuous upward spiral. So what then is a conscious business and what then is conscious capitalism? So I've tried to boil this down as simply as I can. Conscious business is based on two primary purposes. One, business has a deeper purpose or has the potential for a deeper purpose beyond maximizing profits and shareholder value. Second, the business is managed to optimize the value for all of the interdependent stakeholders. Conscious capitalism is merely the larger ecosystem of conscious businesses. When we have created enough conscious businesses in the 21st century, we will reach a tipping point and we will move from traditional industrial capitalism to conscious capitalism. The people who think that capitalism is going to disappear are wrong. It's not. This crisis will not cause capitalism to disappear. It works far better than the alternatives. What's going to, I believe, evolve out of this crisis is a greater impetus and accelerate the evolution to a more conscious system. There are many examples of conscious businesses. I've listed Google, Costco, the Container Store, Southwest Airlines is a few that I know pretty well. The only one I'm an expert in, let's face it, is Whole Foods. The rest of them, they're good examples. This is not the only way to be a conscious business. There are an infinite number of ways to be a conscious business. And I'm just going to put forth today the way Whole Foods does it. If you find it valuable, great. I do not put it forth as any type of absolute truth. It starts with our core values, our deepest purpose being changing and improving the world. And here we go. You can find this in our stores. And also, it's a great example of how our core values continue to evolve because we just added number 6 on in the last year. Turned out our suppliers felt like that they weren't getting enough value, that Whole Foods Market was not partnering with them to the degree that we should. And we ended up having a series of retreats and sessions with our key suppliers, and we've evolved our relationship with them when we put forth the 6th core value. So I'm going to talk about each one of these core values in a minute or so. So the first is selling the highest quality natural and organic foods. Joshua said we're the leader in the world, and I don't know if that's true anymore, but we certainly have led the way, and we possibly are. But whenever Walmart picks anything up, they have so many stores and so much volume that they quickly become number 1 or whatever they. I know Whole Foods is not number 1 in organic milk any longer, for example. Walmart is, and if we are number 1, it's only overall it's only because we have a lot more products than Walmart does. One of the things we're most proud of is that Whole Foods Market now has millions of customers. We believe we've helped improve the health, well-being, and longevity of literally millions of people. We've also proven that the stereotype that many people have that good food and pleasurable eating are like opposites, that junk food is good, healthy food tastes bad. And it's part of our mission to say that actually the healthiest foods actually also taste the very best. Our company's also been very conscious of offering alternatives to the industrialization of our food supply and the degradation that's been an unintended consequence of that industrialization. We're also now intentionally engaged in creating higher animal welfare standards, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. The most important stakeholder at Whole Foods Market that we teach our team members is the customer. And it's really very simple. And that always disappoints the team members who, I usually ask that question, who's the most important stakeholder? And the team members grin and say, well, we are. And I say, actually, no, you're not. You're number two, which is very disappointing to them. But number two, Whole Foods is still really a good thing. But number one is the customer, and it's just elementary business. No customers, no business, no jobs. You have to focus around the customer. And for entrepreneurs, those of you that are entrepreneurs that are going to go out and start your own business, if you remember this and nothing else from this talk today, you probably will be successful in business. If you design your entire business model around fulfilling and satisfying your customer, and everything you do is about that, you will be successful. Why? Because so few businesses do that. They don't get it, or they forget it as they get more successful. We can never forget that customers are going to always shop voluntarily, and they have a choice. And despite the FTC believing Whole Foods Market is a monopoly, the truth of the matter is that all our customers shop with us voluntarily, and we have tremendous competition. So every customer has to be treated as an end in themselves and not as a means to the end of profitability. And we've designed our business model around empowering our team members so that they can satisfy and delight our customers. The mythology that we tell at Whole Foods Market, every company develops stories and those stories portray the values of the company. Our stories, our myths at Whole Foods begin and end around the stories about customers and the exceptional things the team members have done to take care of customers. Another company that does that mythology and storytelling very well is excuse me? FedEx. FedEx, yes, absolutely. But I was thinking of the retailer that's based in Nordstrom's. Thank you. Senior moment. Their mythology, their storytelling, like Whole Foods, is about exceptional customer service. We make our team members who go beyond the ordinary. We turn them into heroes. And the exceptional service needs to be rewarded and recognized and mythologized. The team members may not be number one, but they are a very close number two. We also treat them as ends and not means. What do I mean by that? I mean that their well-being and their happiness is an end in itself. It's not something we just use them in order for the business to be more successful. We've organized our company into self-managing work teams. They do their own hiring. They do their own product placement. They actually, in many cases, will fire their team leaders if the team leaders aren't doing a good job. We have a philosophy of open information equals trust. Most businesses provide information on a need-to-know basis, sort of a little bit based like on the CIA. And at Whole Foods, we believe that the more information we can make available, then the greater the degree of trust that's going to be within the organization. And will that trust sometimes be violated? Will some people run off to our competitors with our information? Yes, they will. It does happen. That's the risk that we are willing to take in order to create an environment with greater trust in it. I've talked about purpose today. that is obviously very key to Whole Foods' strategy: purpose plus empowerment. We also have a conscious rejection of command and control management. We know what command and control means. It means my way or the highway. That, I have this mission to seek out, find, and terminate the command and control managers at Whole Foods. And unfortunately, it's somewhat intrinsic to human nature. There's something about people that give them a little power, and what do they want when you get a little power? More power. So it has to be an ongoing principle of your organization. Shared fate. By shared fate, I mean the better the organization is, the better the team members do, and the better the team members do, the better the organization does. Happy team members equals happy customers, and happy customers equals happy investors. Some of the other things we do, we have open salary information. So what everybody gets paid at Whole Foods Market's public information. We cap our salaries. Currently, that's gone up a few times, but currently it's at 19 times the average pay. We let our team members vote on their benefits every 3 years. I decided a long time ago I wasn't smart enough. Well, I'm like the daddy figure at Whole Foods, so I travel around to the stores, and the team members are always kind of pulling on my pants, saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, can we have this? Can we have this? Can we have this?" And I have the same answer every time. That's an excellent idea. I suggest that you recommend that for our next benefits vote, and we'll let the team members vote on it. And so the way the benefits vote is we determine how much money we'll pay for benefits. We cost out every nominated benefit, and the team members rank them. And that way they get the exact benefits that they collectively want. Stock options for all team members. 93% go to non-executives. We do fully paid health insurance for all our team members. All our full-time team members, which is 30 hours or more, and that is 90% of the people that work for us are full-time. And we also give them personal wellness accounts, like a debit card, up to $1,800 a year they can spend on wellness that's not covered by the insurance plan or help pay for the deductible. Appreciations is something we end all our meetings on. And this is something that is such a transformative technology, socio-technology, that I really think it'll spread around around corporations and other not-for-profit organizations. We simply end our meetings by appreciating one another. It's on a voluntary basis, and it completely shifts the consciousness. Because what do most people do in a meeting? They sit there and judge each other. It's exactly what they do. That idiot. Good grief, what is he talking about? And so all this pettiness, and then that spreads over time. So appreciation completely short-circuits that by ending the meeting, by finding things to appreciate about each other. And since it's voluntary, no one is coerced to do it. I actually think one of the weaknesses of corporate America is they're much better on the hard side of the business, the numbers, and they're not very good on the team member or the soft side of the business, exactly. And it could be those metaphors aren't even very good, hard, soft, if at risk of going into totally politically incorrect and thinking in terms of masculine and feminine. Corporate America has been dominated by men, and a lot of the problems that exist come from an overly masculinized workplace. Now that women are being empowered in the workplace and they're coming into leadership roles, we're seeing workplaces more humanized. Or I'll tell you an anecdote. My father, who's passed, but in the early days he was like my mentor in the business. Since I never took any business classes, I studied philosophy and religion, which you probably could figure that out by this time. And we needed somebody to move up to a new region that we were opening up, say Boston. I had a guy I really wanted to go. I thought he'd be the best person. And my father said, "Just tell Chris to go up there." I said, "Well, I can't do that." And he doesn't want to go up there. He's got a family and they're settled in. They got a house. "Just tell him to go up there. You'll fire him." I said, "Dad, I really don't think you get it. We don't do that anymore. That's not the way things are done at Whole Foods Market." And that had a happy ending. He did make the move. We basically made an offer that in terms of compensation, that he couldn't refuse. But and I think his wife couldn't refuse it. Let me put it that way. Anyway, our philosophy works. We've been one of the 100 best companies to work for 11 years in a row. And we were number 16 in 2008. This is the Fortune list. This is a fascinating slide. It's partly what's wrong with corporate America. You can see back in 1980, the average worker in the United States, the average CEO of a Fortune 500 company received about 40 times the average pay. And by 1990, that had gone up to 100 times the average pay. In 2006, average Fortune 500 CEO received 364 times the average pay. And I do think that leads to mistrust of the organization and ill will. I could say a lot more about how that situations come to pass. Markets are not fully working. Competitor markets are not fully working at the senior levels of most corporations. But that'd take us far afield. You could ask me that question in Q&A if we have time, and I'll give you my opinion. But Whole Foods, we've capped it. We started out at 8 times, went to 11 times, went to 14 times. And a couple years ago, we raised it to 19 times. You have to create parity between what I call external equity, the market, and internal equity, what everybody else gets paid. Leadership has to balance those two. Stock options. Average Fortune 500 company, 75% of the stock options go to the top 5 executives. The CEO gets 25 to 50% of them. At Whole Foods, the top 16 executives get 7% of the options, and 93% go to those non-executives. This philosophy of putting the team member as an important stakeholder works because the companies that do that outperform. How do you beat the indexes? This is one strategy to beat it. Buy the Fortune 100 best companies to work for each year. You can buy and hold, and you'll see you'll beat the S&P by about 60 or 70%. But if you will buy and rebalance with each year's new list, you'll outperform it by approximately 100%. At least that's been the case since they started the lists. I've done this talk a few times to investor groups, and by this time, the ones that haven't left the room yet, I have to come in and say, actually, I really do love profits. You really do love the investors, and they are very important. And that we are stewards of the shareholders' money that's been entrusted to us. Frugality is an important virtue. Profits are ultimately created through voluntary exchange. They are not created through the exploitation of people. The people that trade with the business, whether they be customers or employees or suppliers, are doing so voluntarily with very, very, very few exceptions. Profits create wealth, capital, and prosperity, and it's the fuel. Capital and profits are the fuel for all technological progress in the world. I was talking to somebody before I promised that I would give a different viewpoint. In fact, we're rapidly ending poverty on this planet. And anybody that says we're not lacks any kind of historical perspective. If we go back to 1820, less than 200 years ago, and adjust it to current 2003 dollars, 85% of the people alive on the planet, 85% lived on less than $1 a day. And through capitalism and through the industrialization of our society, we have begun to eliminate poverty across the world. Till today, it has now dropped to under 19%. Now, there's still a huge percentage that live under $2 a day, which is close to 40%. But if you look at the trend lines, if we don't completely run the train off the tracks, which is possible in the kind of crisis we're in right now, the trend lines indicate we will end poverty in the 21st century. There are people, young people alive today. Before you pass, poverty will be something, as Muhammad Yunus likes to say, will be seen only in museums. That is one of the deeper purposes of all businesses, which is to create prosperity and end poverty. Whole Foods is trying to do its part. We have been the fastest growing, the most profitable public food retailer in the past 10 years as a percentage of sales. Let's make no mistake about that. In terms of absolute profitability, Whole Foods is far down the list. We're much smaller than Walmart or Kroger or Safeway. Our same-store sales have averaged 9% over the past 10 years. They've averaged 8% over 30 years. And it's very interesting. We have experienced a tremendous slowdown in our same-store sales growth in the last 6 months, particularly affected by the real estate bust in Florida, Southern California, Las Vegas, and Phoenix. Those markets have really taken it on the nose for us. Our sales per square foot are approximately 100% greater than the average public supermarket company in the United States. And our return on invested capital for stores that are over 1 year of age is 40%. The stock price, this is one of the ones I had to adjust because the stock price has come down so much in the last couple of years. But nevertheless, even with the tremendous decline in our stock price the last couple of years, we still have a 1,000% increase since our IPO in 1992. Supplier-vendor partners are absolutely essential. No company can prosper in the long run unless it develops close working partnerships with its retail partners. I must be saying something wrong as people continue to exit here at a rapid rate. Lock that door. I'm going to get to some other good stuff here pretty soon. I don't want to be boastful, but I do think the organic movement has largely been led by Whole Foods Market, that without us, I don't think you'd be seeing organic foods nearly as common as you see today, that it has been our success and the imitation that has followed from that success. Also, we pretty much built the supply chain for organic. We've been slandered, I think, unfairly by Michael Pollan in his Omnivore's Dilemma with the lack of historical perspective on how things have been in the past. Nevertheless, we're very proud of the fact that Whole Foods has strongly supported our supplier partners. And we're now really pushing local foods. This is almost, if not a larger trend than organic right now. We've created a local producer loan program. In the last year and a half, we've made 30 loans, almost $2 million have been loaned to our suppliers. And we have another 31 loans and $1.7 million in process. This is a program that we call the Whole Trade program, Whole Trade Guarantee. And we're basically partnering with organizations like Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, IMO, and we're making a guarantee regarding the price, the quality, the labor practices, environmental sustainability, and we're donating 1% of the sales to the Whole Planet Foundation, Whole Foods Markets Foundation. And we now have thousands of products in our stores now that have a Whole Trade Guarantee. And our goal is that within, well, it was 10 years, so within 8 years, that 50% of the products we bring in from the developing world will have the Whole Trade Guarantee on it. Since social entrepreneurism is the theme of this, why people are here today, I'm going to talk more about it from this point going forward. Caring about our communities is one of the most important things Whole Foods does. And I think business has thought about it wrong. But I think the right way to think about it is that the communities are a stakeholder in the organization and that they are citizens, that the business is a citizen in various communities, and like any citizen, has responsibilities back to the community. It does not have infinite responsibilities, just like you as an individual do not have infinite responsibilities to your communities. Whole Foods thinks about our responsibilities to the community stakeholder on a local basis, a national basis, and a global basis. I believe philanthropy should be managed prudently, just like every other part of the business, and it's consistent with citizenship. I do not believe it comes at the expense of the shareholders if it's done correctly, that in fact, leadership can create a win-win-win scenario where you can create more value for your shareholders through effective, prudent, and frugal management of the community stakeholder relationship. What Whole Foods does, we donate 5% of all of our net profits to not-for-profit organizations. We gave more than $14 million in 2007. Approximately 80% of that money is given locally in the stores. And the stores support thousands upon thousands of local organizations. The other 20% goes globally through our foundations. And we've created an organization called the Whole Planet Foundation. This is only 3 years old. We went into partnership with Grameen Bank, Grameen Trust, Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel. I read his book a few years ago and thought, good God, Banker to the Poor, what an incredible book. This is revolutionary. Why don't Whole Foods get involved in this? Pitched it to our leadership. They said, this is a great idea. They all read the book, called up Muhammad Yunus, met with him. This is before he won the Nobel Peace Prize. And next thing I know, the Grameen was wanting to expand outside of Bangladesh. And so our timing was perfect. And so we've now done, we have programs in effect now in Costa Rica, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, India, East Timor, and Indonesia. Our strategy is every place that Whole Foods Market trades, we're setting, the foundation's setting up microcredit lending in the communities that we're trading in. So we feel like if we're trading in that community, we have a social responsibility to it. We've now have 32,000 members, so that means Whole Foods has already helped over 100,000 people get loans, including their larger family, in the last 3 years. And 99% of those loans are to women. Why to women? Because women and children are the poorest, most exploited people in the world. And I used to make cracks about what men do with the money. If you can use your imaginations, I'm not going to make that crack because I've had people come up and say they were outraged, they were offended by what I said about what men do with the money when the loans are made. So I'm not going to say that, except they are oftentimes not the best stewards of the money. Women have proved to be better risk. Africa is a focal point for Whole Foods in 2009. We're going to get more projects going in Kenya. We want to get some in the Middle East. We're looking at Sudan, but we're really worried we can't make it's not safe. So, but eventually in China, Vietnam, wherever Whole Foods trades, we want to set up microcredit lending institutions. The sixth most important stakeholder of Whole Foods is the environment. And Whole Foods has had a strong, we've been named the greenest corporation in America several times by various different organizations. We strongly support organic, local, and sustainable agriculture. We are committed deeply to sustainable seafood. We were a founder of the founding retail partner in the Marine Stewardship Council. One of our executives serves on their board of directors. We've recently set up third-party certified aqua culture standards, where we brought in not-for-profit marine organizations to help us set those standards up. So our farm seafood can be certified as environmentally sustainable. The company has a strong commitment to recycling, alternative energy, 100% wind energy credits, green building. All the new stores are being built with LEED certification targets in mind. We got rid of our plastic bags. That was an initiative we did earlier in the year, and a commitment to animal welfare. Our stores organize what we call green mission teams in each store. These are volunteer efforts by the team members. And I will tell you that the young generation that's coming up and is represented in this room today, the millennial generation, has a very different consciousness than either my generation, the boomers, or the Generation X that followed. The millennials are an incredibly idealistic, can-do cohort of people. And they are working for Whole Foods, and they are pushing us in green initiatives probably a lot faster than we would go if they weren't there poking us all the time. And they are creating these green mission teams, and they're networking with each other. They're also they're great networkers because they grew up with the computer technologies, the email, social networking, Twitter. They're very technologically adept. And as a result, the green mission part of Whole Foods Market is rapidly evolving and accelerating way beyond whatever I thought was possible. Briefly talk about animal welfare. We'll be launching in early 2009 across our company. We've already launched this in the UK, an animal welfare rating program. We're going to rate all of the animal products that we sell based on how the animals were raised. In order to get into our program, they'll have to hit the minimum of a 1, step 1, and then there are various steps that go up from there. And so step 1, no cages, no crates. Step 2, enriched indoors environment. Step 3 means access to outdoors with an enhanced outdoor environment. Step 4 means the animal's raised in pasture and spends his whole life in pasture with access to shelter. Step 5, while we're phasing out physical mutilations all along the line, at step 5, all physical mutilations have been eliminated: bill trimming, beak trimming, toe clipping, tail docking, castration, branding. There are numerous things we do to our livestock animals which would sicken you probably if you knew. And then beyond that, step 5 plus, which is not legal in most of the United States, on-farm birth and slaughter, transportation of the animals is highly stressful. Since some of you are going to go, since you're doing social entrepreneurship, inevitably some of you are going to go into the not-for-profit sector. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I think there's a bias in the not-for-profit sector against profits, because profits are seen as part of that whole greedy, selfish part of business. And I think that mentality needs to evolve and change. One of the things I love about Grameen, I love social entrepreneurship that is able to become financially self-sustaining. And Grameen is the best example of an organization that became financially self-sustaining while be dedicated to social entrepreneurship. One of the things that the not-for-profits get is they get that they have the deeper purpose, right? They're all created with a deeper purpose in mind. That's their great gift to the for-profit sector. That's what the for-profits need to learn from the not-for-profits. But just having a deeper purpose does not mean that you successfully transcend human nature. You do not go from having self-interest simply because you have an idealistic deeper purpose. The not-for-profit organizations also need to evolve to a more conscious model. I think this is one of the biggest problems that exists in our society today. On the left, we have a vision of altruism, where not-for-profits and government exist. Government being they exist for public service. And I've given you'll hear these politicians talk all the time, I've been in public service for 30 years. And they say that with great sanctimony. And we have this stereotype in our society that that's good, that the not-for-profit governmental public service is altruistic and good. On the other side is that money-grubbing, selfish corporations. And all they care about is money. They're raping the environment. They're exploiting the workers. They're ruining the whole planet. And this is the dichotomy that exists in our world today. It is how many people think of business and how they think of not-for-profits and government. And I just think it's fundamentally wrong that human nature does not change when you go to work for a corporation or if you go to work for a not-for-profit or for the government. You hear it sometimes when people say, I sold out. I got an MBA, and I wanted to do something good, but instead I'm going to be working for a corporation now, and maybe someday I'm going to make enough money, and then I'm going to be able to do good, right? That's kind of the dichotomy that we have in our minds and our society set up. I think it's a false dichotomy, and when I talk about conscious capitalism, it's because I want to end that dichotomy. And human beings are obviously both self-interested and altruistic. We're both. All you have to do is examine your own heart to see that you care about yourself. Yes, you care about your families, care about your friends, and you also care in a larger sense that human beings are capable of love. And so the art of conscious business is to create these win-win-win scenarios, creative love, where the self is honored, where self-interest is met, and at the same time social needs and the greater good is also met. This is a not-for-profit organizational model. Does this look familiar? It should, because it's almost exactly the same as the conscious business model I put up there before. You still have core values. Instead of business mission, you have your social mission. You still have stakeholders. You have employees or team members that work for you. You still have suppliers. You still have customers that you're dealing with, whoever you're doing the service for. Instead of investors, you have donors. You need to keep those donors happy, or they won't continue to make donations to your organization. And just because you're not for profit doesn't mean you yourself don't have environmental and social responsibilities. How do we was there a roadmap to traditional companies becoming conscious companies? And the answer is yes, they can, and it is happening right now. The corporate America is waking up rapidly. They are evolving. And I just had dinner on Monday night with the CEO of PepsiCo, an amazing woman named Indra Nui. And you ask her, Indra, what's the purpose of PepsiCo? And she says, PepsiCo's purpose is now to be a good company. And I said, well, that must have been difficult, because she's only been the CEO for a couple of years. And I said, that must have been difficult to persuade the organization to do that. That wasn't the traditional purpose of PepsiCo. Their traditional purpose of PepsiCo was to beat the crap out of Coke and sell more sugar water than Coke did. And she said, you'd be surprised, John, there's been no resistance at all. Everybody wants to work for a company dedicated to the good. And they've on an initiative to have over 50% of their sales be healthy products by the end of this decade. I don't know if they're going to make it or not, but that's their goal. And they have a sense of deeper purpose. She's very aware of the stakeholder model and is trying to run Pepsi from that perspective. And I don't think she's that rare. Well, I do think she's that rare, but I think she's becoming increasingly less rare. I think there's a new generation of leaders that are beginning to take over the corporations of the United States that have a different consciousness, that are ripe for conversion to the conscious capitalism model. So, in conclusion, I'm going to underline those two core principles of conscious business. The business has a deeper purpose beyond maximizing profits and shareholder value, and that two, the business should be managed to optimize value for all of the interdependent stakeholders. Conscious capitalism is nothing more than the larger ecosystem of conscious businesses. Conscious capitalism, I believe, will become the dominant paradigm, economic paradigm in the 21st century, because conscious capitalism works better. It's going to outcompete the traditional businesses, and nothing succeeds in business like success. So I know we're going to do some Q&A now, but I anticipated a few questions, so I'm going to do those real quick. Sort of head them off at the pass. One, why am I opposed to profit? I love profit. I'm not opposed to profit. I actually think the strategy that I've outlined today results in greater profit, not less profit. When business leaders become conscious that a business is not a machine, but part of an interdependent and evolving system with multiple constituencies, they will discover that the best way to maximize long-term profits and shareholder value is to discover your deeper purpose and manage the business to optimize value for all the stakeholders, because they're all connected together. Is conscious capitalism the same thing as corporate social responsibility? No, no, no. They are not the same thing. They're not synonyms. They're very different. Why? Because corporate social responsibility generally takes the traditional corporate model. It's still a profit-centered shareholder maximization model, and it grafts onto it a social responsibility department. Yeah, you take care of that social responsibility stuff. We're getting hassled a lot by people about that. And so it becomes basically part of the public relations department. It is not the same thing. Conscious capitalism is a transformative model of business that doesn't have to graft social responsibility onto it, because the community and environmental stakeholders are at the very essence of why the business exists in the first place. So corporate social responsibility is good, But at best, it's very much a first step. And corporations are going to have to go a lot further to become conscious businesses. Does this mean I'm advocating control of corporations by stakeholders? No, I am not. Absolutely not. The shareholders and investors must control the corporation. If they do not control it, they will be exploited by the other shareholders, by the other stakeholders and by management. Why? Because they get paid last. Think about all the stakeholders who trade with the business. Customers, using Whole Foods as an example, customer comes into our store today, they get their lunch. They've been paid off immediately, right? They got their food, they paid their money, trade complete. Team members are working today, they'll be paid in 2 weeks. They're making a trade, they get paid in 2 weeks. Suppliers, they get paid in 30 days. When do the stockholders get paid? They get paid if and only if there's profits left over after everybody else gets paid. And so if they don't control that, undoubtedly they're going to get ripped off. They have to be able to fire the board of directors and ultimately the management. So I have never advocated and never will advocate for anything that undermines the property rights of the investors. What about conflicts between the various stakeholders? Oh, John, this all sounds very good, but the reality is there's conflicts between labor and management. These stakeholders are not in this wonderful interdependent system you talk about. They're at war with one another. They hate each other. I cannot deny that there from time to time are conflicts of interest that exist in any organization. The analytical mind looks for the separations that exist, and they miss the larger picture. The larger picture is that these things are connected together, that they are interdependent on one another. The holistic view sees and thinks in terms of relationships. And if you divide something into its parts, you will no longer see the relationships that link them together. So in some ways, I'm arguing for a holistic, or I'm arguing for philosophically what's been termed holism. You have to think of the business as existing within a larger ecosystem, all connected together, and that management's job is to manage that larger ecosystem as best they can to create win-win scenarios. The harmony of interest is far more important and far more visible to me than the conflicts of interest. Finally, this one gets thrown back to me by my libertarian friends all the time. They quote me Adam Smith. By pursuing his own interest, he frequently promotes that of the society more effectually than when he really intends to promote it. I have never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good. They quote it, throw it out to me, and say, there you go, John. Adam Smith says you're full of... If you think about this quote and break it down, there's two parts to it. The first part reinforces Adam Smith's amazingly perceptive, his greatest act of genius was the idea of the invisible hand metaphor, that voluntary exchange between people acting strictly in their own self-interest also promotes the greater social good. That is true. I do not deny that. That's the wonderful, brilliant insight of Adam Smith and capitalism. It's the second part of the statement that I disagree with. I have never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good. In fact, much of the good that is done in the world is done by people who actually intend to do good. The pursuit of self-interest does, through voluntary exchange, lead to a greater social good. However, intentional do-gooding results in most of the good that's done in this world. The visible hand needs to supplement the invisible hand. So I'm going to end it by just that last sentence. I also believe that supplementing the invisible hand with the visible hand, if done consciously and on an ongoing basis by individuals and corporations around the world, would help push humanity into an era of accelerated progress that would be unprecedented in world history. That's what Whole Foods Market is trying to do, and that is what conscious capitalism really means.
John, thank you. That was fantastic. And we're just going to do about 30 minutes of Q&A. We have 2 microphones, so we can alternate between the microphones. When you come up, please quickly state your name, your affiliation, and quickly state your question, because obviously we have a lot of people who want to get to ask questions here.
Hello. Hi, my name's Carla. I'm a Reynolds Scholar here at NYU. I want to start out with a comment, maybe playing devil's advocate about the whole trade label. Some may say that it's redundant, and while it's great and it does sell product, the branding of whole trade is shifting focus away from these other third-party certification schemes that you're partnering with, like Rainforest Alliance and Fair Trade. So that being said, do you see it as a responsibility of Whole Foods Market to improve, reform, and scale these labels? If not, or if so, what do you see as the future of these certification processes as a part of conscious capitalism?
I guess I don't agree. I do not feel like it's taking anything away from Fair Trade or Rainforest Alliance. If you look at our products, you'll see a whole trade guarantee label, and you'll see a Fair Trade label, or you'll see a Rainforest Alliance label. What it does is it creates competition between these certifying agencies, and that's a good thing. We have Rainforest Alliance and Fair Trade competing to be the certifiers. That's making both of those organizations more efficient through that competition. And I actually think more corporations like Starbucks will probably adopt something similar to what Whole Foods is doing. You'll notice Starbucks has just a little tiny bit of fair trade. And what they've tried to do is emphasize their cafe program. That really hasn't caught on. Instead, they should have adopted, similar to what Whole Foods has done, a greater partnership. We're in deep partnership with Fair Trade, and we're in deep partnership with Rainforest Alliance. I can tell you, those 2 organizations have no love lost for each other. They are competitors. And hey, Fair Trade's partnering with Walmart. They're not just partnering with Whole Foods Market. Competition is good, and it's good even in the not-for-profit sector. So Fair Trade gets their brand put on all our products where we use their certification, and but the whole trade is the umbrella brand that our customers can look for. Instead of having a multiplicity of different labels, they can see that one, and then they can look for which the certification certifier is. In any case, that's our strategy. I think it's a good one. We're going to alternate back and forth. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tracy Roberts. I'm at the law school.
Are you pursuing truth and are you pursuing justice? I want to know that.
I hope so.
Okay.
That's my goal.
Good.
Muhammad Yunus wrote a more recent book advocating social businesses, and the distinction that he creates is that social businesses don't have shareholders that receive the profits of those of the capitalist endeavors. It's that they recycle those profits into the organization to further the mission. And he stated that if you have shareholders that do have a profit motive, ultimately that's going to undermine any of your social or conscious goals, because ultimately when those goals are in conflict, the decision has to be made towards profitability. So are there structural things in your company that prevent that from occurring? Is there some way that the board of directors is organized? Is there a way that the shares are issued? Is there anything that keeps structurally from... It's great within a single generation to accomplish as much as you have. However, often in transition, changes occur. And so I was wondering whether you have anything structural in place that keeps that ethos and those values and your goals in place over time.
Well, first, let me say Muhammad Yunus is one of my heroes. But I disagree with him on this. That in fact, I don't think his social businesses philosophy is going to really take off. And the reason why is that if it's a for-profit business and investors don't get a return on it, investors are going to be reluctant to make the investment in it, one. Number two, because it's a for-profit, you can't make a donation to it and get a tax deduction. You have to understand how important the tax deductibility is for the not-for-profit sector. If you take that away, we would see less money given to the not-for-profit sector. So he thinks he's in the best of those two worlds, and I would say he's actually in no man's land. He's going to have trouble getting investment capital from people who want a return on their investment, and at the same time, people who want to make their donations and also get a tax deduction aren't going to be incented to give to those social businesses. So that is a flaw in his strategy. You said something that I also disagree with, that Muhammad Yunus said, and why is it that if there's a conflict between the shareholders and the other stakeholders, that it will be decided in favor of the shareholders? I don't think that's necessarily true. Whole Foods isn't organized that way. I think many businesses will sacrifice short-term profits to maintain. Most recently, Costco, for example, has very publicly announced that they have not taken price increases, even though it's hurting their short-term profitability and hurt their stock price temporarily, in order to keep prices low for their customers to build share. Actually, they hope, of course, they'll get long-term profits from it. But there is no, you again focused on, or Muhammad Yunus is focusing on the, quote, conflicts of interest instead of the harmony of interest. For me, the harmony of interest is what rules. And the function of leadership, the creative leadership today, has to figure out strategies where everyone can win. The shareholders can win, the team members can win, the customers can win. And you know what? That's not going to change if you have a social business. If your social business can't make any money, it's eventually going to fail. So they have to have a profit motive too. I don't know anybody has the profit motive. I don't even like that term. It sort of implies that there's somehow or another, when you become business, you get a whole set of different kind of motives. You become a different kind of human being. You want to respond to that?
I just wanted to ask a follow-up question. This kind of leads to maybe your chart with the CEO spiking multiples of salary compared to the average worker. What happens often in companies is that if the shareholders, when they have their meeting, they instruct the board of directors to change the people who are in leadership if they're not getting sufficient quarterly profits. So that's the structural thing that drives shareholders seeking profit above all else. And so I was wondering whether there's anything structural that you can put in place that would keep that from ultimately controlling everything.
There's nothing structural you can put in that changes human nature. Wisdom, hey, Grameen will have its own succession crisis someday too. Muhammad Yunus has not figured out a way to be immortal. And he will die, and he will move on. And we will see what happens to the next generation of leadership at Grameen. And that's true of every organization. I will pass on from Whole Foods. As long as I'm CEO, chances are good Whole Foods will stay aligned with this philosophy. But even though I will probably live to be 150, since I am vegan and I eat everything in Whole Foods, nevertheless, I will someday die. And if the shareholders don't throw me out before then. But there is nothing you can put in the structure that can't, you can change the structure, but then it can be changed back, right? You can change the articles of incorporation and the bylaws, and then the shareholders can go right around and change them back. So there is nothing you can do that can create goodness forever. It takes the wisdom of leadership, and that can be gained and it can be lost in an organization. PepsiCo gets a visionary leader like Indra Nooyi and they make a shift. But maybe she'll move on someday and PepsiCo might go backwards. I'm talking about a shift in consciousness. And as that shift in consciousness and awareness grows, and I see this young generation coming up already, honestly, at a higher state of consciousness than my generation was at a similar age. And I think humanity is advancing. But it goes in a spiral, okay? We're actually, in the spiral, we're taking a couple of steps backwards. But the general thrust of evolution has continued to be upward. So I'm a very optimistic person, and I can't give you an absolute answer that will answer for all time, but I'll put the challenge to you, go out and create your own organization and do as much good as you can in the world while you have the opportunity. That's what I'm trying to do.
Hi, my name's Jason. I'm a Reynolds Fellow and also in the law school, and most importantly, perhaps for this week, I'm a Longhorn. I first I
Nobody
want
knows
to
what you're
say
talking about up here, but I do, so thank you.
the Texas OU game is coming up this weekend. It's a really big game. First off, I wanted to say I wholeheartedly agree with what you were saying about the harmony of interest and about aligning incentives. I think a lot of it has to do with the CEO and the leadership being able to lead and set up a certain type of corporate culture within the organization and aligning that corporate culture with shareholder culture and bringing those two together. So I think I wholeheartedly agree with that point. My question is around the types of supply chain development efforts you guys are working on in developing worlds.
Mm-hmm.
A lot has been spoken about, and you spoke a number of times about it, about Whole Foods to develop supply chains here in the U.S. What type of work are you guys doing in developing countries, and who are you partnering with down there?
We've already developed a very complex supply chain around the world. That's why we're making those commitments to the Whole Planet Foundation microcredit loans in those communities. And while Whole Foods is committed to whole trade, because we're trying to take as much of our supply chain as possible through the whole trade. By the way, I just thought of something else in answer to that previous question is, organizations like Transfer and Flow, they can't certify fast enough. If there's a huge bottleneck, there needs to be other competitive certifiers who will increase the throughput here, because we're going to transform the world and the supply chain to more ethical standards. It needs to become a much bigger movement than just fair trade. So that's what we're doing. We're working with hundreds, thousands of different supply chain around the world, and I mean, it's far more complex than I could possibly explain or even understand myself, because we've got thousands of relationships. Whole Foods does business with literally tens of thousands of different, we have over 3,000 suppliers of meat alone in the United States. Think about that, 3,000 just for that. You take produce, I mean, I think the number of vendors in our vendor list is in the tens of thousands. So we're just trying to trade as ethically as we possibly can in the developing world, and we think the key to that is our whole trade guarantee program. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. Is there another part to it?
No, I think that was
Okay.
pretty good. Thanks.
Hello, I'm William Finkelstein. I'm an MBA student here at NYU, and we began to touch on some of my question already in the Q&A with discussion of profits and the importance of the shareholder. But with your experience as a leader of a publicly traded company for an extended period of time, you maybe speak about whether it's easier or more challenging as a publicly traded company versus a privately held company to achieve the mission of conscious capitalism?
Well, when the stock is up, it's easier, and when the stock is down, it's harder. So stock is down right now, it's a lot harder. I mean, people talk out in the media about the pressures that you get from Wall Street, right? Well, that's true. But you know what? You get pressures from all of your stakeholders. Not a day passes where customers aren't complaining about something at Whole Foods. Right? Even as we're sitting here talking, I guarantee you there are hundreds of people right now around the country that are saying something they don't like about our store, something's too expensive, or this is out of stock. So customers are also putting pressure on. Team members are seldom satisfied for long. They want more money, better benefits, better working hours. They want to get promoted. They want to rise up. And you have dissatisfaction every time you do we post all our positions, for example. And we just posted an important position, the president of our Southern Pacific region. We had 2 candidates go for it. And I can tell you the one that didn't get it was bitterly disappointed, bitterly disappointed. So, and he let me know how disappointed he was about it. Therefore reinforcing that we made the correct choice. But I didn't tell him that. And then suppliers, I mean, it's in a publicly traded corporation or even a privately traded company, you've got the various stakeholders. If you think about it as a system and you're managing the system, they all want more. They all want more. And your job is to figure out how to get them all more. If you can do that, you'll be successful, and if you can't, you won't be. When the stock is down, the biggest risk that a publicly traded company like Whole Foods has is a hostile takeover. Stock is cheap. We are vulnerable to someone taking us over, throwing me out on the street, and the woman that talked before, converting Whole Foods Market into a cash register for as long as they can. That's always a risk. We took that risk when we took venture capital money in back in 1988. We knew kind of what we were getting in for. But all in all, I think it's been, the only thing other thing I like about being public is our competitors like Trader Joe's. I mean, Trader Joe's sales are comparable to Whole Foods. They're a lot more profitable than we are, but nobody knows it because they're private. That's the best thing about it. You don't have to disclose everything to the media, who then makes up names like Whole Paycheck and says horrible things about you. And if Trader Joe's CEO had posting on the internet, who would have cared? So there are disadvantages. There's also Sarbanes-Oxley. So and in fact, looked like we're in for a new round of deeper regulations in an Obama administration. So chances are, or McCain administration. So being a public corporation will probably become less and less attractive. So we'll see what happens.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm also an MBA student, so my question is sort of similar. But you referenced Walmart earlier and that they are bringing organic products to the shelves and to the consumer. Do you think that it's possible for a company like Walmart to achieve conscious capitalism on the back end when their main priority is profit?
Walmart is the most fascinating case study there is. First of all, I disagree with your last statement, that Walmart's primary purpose is profits. I do not believe that's true. Walmart has always been animated by a deeper purpose. Can somebody else tell me what it is? Low prices. Walmart is actually dedicated to their customers.
But that is their cost advantage, and that's why they're profitable.
Walmart could have made a lot more money if they were willing to sacrifice their most important value, which is low prices always. You will not understand Walmart if you don't understand it wouldn't be such a large corporation if they didn't have a deeper purpose. Their deeper purpose is low prices, and they designed their entire business model to achieve lower prices. So, in my opinion, Walmart's taking care of two of the stakeholder groups pretty well. I don't think they're a conscious business, but they're well on their way. God, can you believe I'm defending Walmart up here? First, they have put their customers first. Secondly, they've made good returns for their shareholders. And more recently, Walmart is very sincere about the environmental stakeholder. This is having a transformative effect on them. I don't know whether they intended it to be that way when they got started, but once they went down the green road, it's begun to have effect on their corporate culture. So they're still missing at least two of the stakeholders. They need to do something better for their employees, their associates, and they need to rethink their supplier relationships, in my opinion. So I don't think they have a stakeholder relationship model yet, but Walmart does have a deeper purpose, and that is those low prices. And by the way, that has been a good thing. It has had unintended bad consequences as well, but I mean, Walmart, with low prices, I mean, our comps are down, theirs are up. People want to have cheap stuff. So I also know all the problems with Walmart. I've read all the bad books about Walmart, so I know all the villainous things they're doing. But I see them in transition right now, and it's quite possible in the 21st century they might pop out as a pretty conscious business. We'll see. I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that one.
So you do think it's a possibility?
It's possible.
Integrate it?
I already see they're moving somewhat in that direction with their strong environmental initiatives. I don't think that's a public relationship thing with Walmart. They're really making some substantive investments here. They just need to think about it in terms of their employees and suppliers, and they might get there. Sure, hope so. Last question. I got a sign that says last question. So I guess that's you.
Maya Rodell. I'm a Draper student here. And my question is about local versus organics. I'm wondering if you could comment on that or pick a side, but as a business person.
Pick a side? I'm for both.
Of course.
I mean, they're both good, right? I will say that local right now is all the rage, and Whole Foods Market's doing more to promote local foods than anybody else I know. So local is good. Local foods are going to be fresher. They're going to have great environmental advantages to it. There are many good things about local. So, however, there's a dark side to local, which most people aren't aware of. So I'm going to tell you what that is right now, so you can give you food for thought. The dark side is that, remember that chart I showed with how poverty was being ended on this planet? It's being ended because we're trading with poor countries and we're buying agriculture from them. And they need to trade with us. And they need to trade organic products because that's good for their environment. That means they're going to be having less pesticides and less chemical fertilizers in their own local ecosystems. So we need both. We need to get organic products from the developing world, and we need to have a great emphasis on local as well. So we need both. Both are good. There is no magical formula. Whole Foods is trying to do both. People slam us because we don't have enough local. The fair trade people slam us because we don't have enough fair trade products. Again, the art of leadership is to somehow or another juggle it so that you can create win-win-win value for everyone. Did I answer your question, or did I dodge it sufficiently to?
Both.
Okay, good. That was my goal. I think that's it. So thanks for coming out today.
Thank you everyone for attending, and thanks again to John Mackey for coming in today.